Hello, it's the Frankly Harry podcast with your host, Frank Weber. So glad you could join me here in the forest again this week. Got a really packed episode for you today. I wanted to start off talking about something that can happen to you after you've lived a few years and have kind of accumulated some stuff. You could call it wealth, or it could be non-monetary things, what have you. And that always makes me wonder about the demographics of this show and whether you can actually relate to this. Hopefully you can, but back at the beginning of April, I was wondering what had happened to one of my bank accounts. I only had like $50 in there or something like that. But I stopped getting statements and it wasn't active. I wasn't doing any transactions. And so I called them and they said it had been closed and turned over to the state of Texas, which is what will happen to bank accounts if you don't use them. No big deal. You can get your property back. This lady at the bank directed me, though, to a nationwide database that can tell you what missing property you have in any and all of the states. So it's right there in one place. However, they want you to pay a commission for using that service when you can actually go directly to the states if you want to. But anyway, they told me that I still had something from back in Arizona when I worked out there in the late aughts, like 2007 to 2010. And that was pretty easy. I was able to just file that through email, and I got a confirmation from the state of Arizona. And they said it would be about 130 days to process. This was back on April Fool's Day of this year, actually a little bit before this show started. So I'm not quite to the average of 130-day processing time, so I'm still waiting on that. But then they told me that Texas wanted all these forms printed and mailed. And so I did that. It wound up being kind of a fat envelope, just a regular letter size envelope, so I mailed it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they sent it back to me that said, you don't have enough postage. So the damn postal service said I needed to put more postage or whatever. So I went back by there and they weighed it, and I gave them more postage or whatever. And then I never heard back from the state. And I didn't know that you could go online to the state and just check to see if there's still outstanding property there. And here we are 3 months later, and it says, yes, there's still property of mine there, and that I had not made a claim for it. So I don't know what happened to this letter. There's sensitive information in there. Or maybe they got it and discarded it because it didn't have the right form or some crazy nonsense. So I was able to go ahead and do a filing there, and anyway, we'll see how that goes. If you go directly through the states, it's not going to cost you anything, but that's just a heads up there. You may be out there missing some property, and you should check. You can check the nationwide database, but you probably should go state by state if you really want to not have to pay any fees and get things back fairly quickly, I guess you could say. I'll keep you up to date on how that goes. I know that wasn't a really funny story. Perhaps it was kind of entertaining, that going through the mail and all those problems and then still not getting anything done. It's kind of reflective in a way of how I believe our society today is not as functional as it used to be. And there's a lot of potential reasons for that. The main thing I wanted to talk about today is that there was this, I'm actually recording this on a Sunday night, the 21st, and on the 19th, there was a computer program called Crowdstrike that experienced some sort of outage, some sort of engineering defect, they said. And they wound up shutting down a lot of stuff this past Friday. The main thing was the airlines. A lot of people delayed and canceled. And as of this recording, a lot of people who probably still haven't been able to go home or wherever they were traveling. Very sad situation. My thoughts and prayers go out to them. But then there were some other issues. Certain vendors were not able to process transactions for goods and services. There apparently was a healthcare issue as well. I've seen that before in dentistry. Nowadays, if your computer shuts down and everything was required to go paperless, you are up shit creek. You can't schedule patients. You can't read their treatment plan. You can't make a new treatment plan. You can't bill them. Not everybody was affected, though, thank goodness. Apparently, the stock market was still able to open and go on without a hitch. What really bothered me about this, and actually before I get into that, there's always a lot of people on social media talking about, they have their own thoughts and opinions. You might even call them conspiracy theories. We had another event happen today where President Biden has decided not to continue his campaign and won't be running any further for the presidential election this fall. So there's another potential, lot of thoughts and potential conspiracy theories on that. Not everything is a conspiracy, though, but they do exist. And I think people do play politics, and if they want to get rid of somebody, it could very well be a conspiracy. So I don't like it when people automatically say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, and that it somehow is not truthful, because conspiracies do exist. Not everything is a conspiracy. Probably one of the biggest conspiracies in this country was the JFK assassination. Has conspiracy written all over it. But we're not going to get into that today. We're talking about this Crowdstrike thing. What really bothered me was that, and this is going to be historical context, kind of fuddy-duddy, people saying, like, why the hell are you talking about this shit again, Frank? Why don't you get with the times? Because I lived in a different era when, things were different, and we either didn't have computers or we didn't have much of a computer influence. My dad absolutely hated computers. I think he would have loved the scene in Die Hard when John McClane, I can't remember if he tied some guy's body or a bomb or something to a computer and threw it down an elevator shaft or something. Or maybe it was just the computer itself. I don't know. My dad would have liked that scene because he hated computers. And back then, the computers were not all linked by the internet. They had a dark screen and usually like green writing or numbers on the screen. You could use them for word processing or spreadsheets, sometimes video games. Couldn't stand video games either. But the point of all this is that the other day the world in many ways shut down, and we couldn't have goods and services that we used to be able to have before computers had gotten so intertwined with them. And it's very troubling. It's not like the COVID shutdown exactly. Computers didn't really have anything to do with that, but we have gotten so entwined with this technology that we don't know how it used to be and how to go back and operate in an older fashion in order to get the goods and services that people need. Airline flying is the biggest example in that industry has so many issues nowadays, especially the ones that are based in the United States. I don't know why they can't ever get their shit together. I mean, always have issues about, pilots or flights getting too low to the ground, or whether the pilots have good qualifications because of the alleged DEI issues that they're trying to install in these flights. And then a lot of them can't fly without computer programs now. It's almost as if there was more freedom and flexibility before we had computers. And I can't, I remember, here's another timeline for you. If you remember the movie Airplane, one of my favorites, hysterical, rolling on the floor laughing movie. At the very beginning of the movie, the pilots are already sitting in the cockpit, and this plane is being serviced. I think that was the one with, so Captain Over, who was played by Peter Graves. I know, oh gosh, now I'm having trouble. Jimmy Walker, JJ Dynamite was, I think, looking under the hood, but then another guy has the mechanical ladder, comes up to the window, and somehow or another Captain Over is required to pay for the service. So Captain Over gives the guy his credit card. And we used to have these machines where you put the credit card down in a little slot, and then you put this carbon paper on top of it, and then you'd swipe it right and then swipe it left. And that would give a copy of your credit card, which the vendor would then have to mail into the card company in order to get the payment. Okay, so that movie came out in 1980, basically before the PC. And then if you forward to the mid-90s, I had a job in high school at Drug Emporium in Austin. And I remember all of our credit card processing, as well as check processing, making sure the check was good, actually went through the phones at that particular time. That was right before the internet, as we know it, became commercially available. So that was a little bit better system than the swipey right and swipey left cha-choom machine that we used to have. And then forward even further than that, and this kind of took me aback, when I had a practice here in Canyon within the last 10 years, a lot of the credit card processing, instead of going through, and check processing, instead of going to the phone lines, then you actually had to have internet in order to make sure that the credit card was processed correctly. Probably same thing with checks as well. But it's crazy how technology is so intertwined, and if it goes out, we are just absolutely dead in the water, and it bothers the shit out of me. I mean, is there no other better way to do it and make sure that this society is functional anywhere near the way it was even 5 years ago? And we just can't continue to have shutdowns like that. But then the problem itself may not be as bad as what I feel is like a lack of outrage and concern from a lot of citizens. I mean, I'm sure there were some angry customers, angry flyers the other day when this outage occurred. But I just don't see a lot of people, enough people fighting back and saying we've got to do better, we can do better. This is humanity and this is business, and we all have needs and desires and dreams and goals and that are all related to this, and we've got to do better. So I'm just wondering where the outrage is on that. Speaking of lack of outrage from a lot of people, I also think that when it comes to comedy and being funny, you have to be more outrageous and take a lot more risks, which is something that I want to do on this show and also in the written word. So that's an interesting, perhaps, second topic that we can talk about someday regarding outrage and outrageousness. Maybe something to look forward to. Not really going to get into the Biden thing yet. He is still going to be president through his term in January 20th. But he has dropped out of the race, and that leads to a lot of speculation, a lot of head scratching, and wondering where exactly they're going with this, which is fair to wonder that. But I don't know. We've got some strange times in this country, and wondering where everything is headed and whether people are doing their research and going to vote appropriately for policy rather than personality this fall. And there was something else I was just about to say on that. It escapes me. Anyway, we could talk about that another show, another time. I'm sure there's going to be more news developing on it. Oh, I remember what it was now. When you choose who to vote for this fall, it needs to be kind of like the head coach of the football team deciding which quarterback is going to give them a better chance to win that weekend. That's the way you should approach voting, and not what someone else says, or it's definitely not what media and social media say. Anyway, I need to get on. I am amazed at all the people who have died lately, and it's so sad to hear about all that. And I'm still not really going to get to everybody. I mean, there were a couple of others that I could mention here, but I'm not going to mention everybody. But about 2 weeks ago, Joe Bonsall, who was a tenor voice of the Oak Ridge Boys for about 50 years, retired at the end of last year. He passed away from, I want to say he had like Lou Gehrig's disease, or one of the debilitating muscular diseases that caused him to, neuromuscular diseases that caused him to retire. He passed away at age 75 or 76. He was the voice that sang most of Elvira. In case you didn't know, Richard Sturban was the bass. That was the most popular part of the song, it seemed like, but he sang the rest of it. He looked like John Oates from Hall & Oates did Joe Bonsall, so we're going to miss him a lot. I have to give a shout out. I just went to his funeral the other day. This is a bizarre story. Here in Canyon, my family physician, Dr. Robert Gross, passed away July 11th. My wife and I had an appointment at 8:30 that morning, and we saw him, and he treated us, went over our annual exam, seemed pretty normal to me. Apparently passed away at work later in the day, and made it very surreal to us, and really praying and thinking about him and his family in this difficult time. And I was fortunate to be able to attend the funeral service the other day. Really going to miss him. And then the last one I wanted to mention was none other than Bob Newhart passing away. I was a huge fan of Bob Newhart's. I guess he did some stand-up, did a lot of skits. Big Show was the Bob Newhart show in the 70s when he played a psychologist. Comes on in reruns every so often. It was a pretty good show, but the one I remember the most was the Newhart show from the 1980s when he and his wife were, or TV wife, were innkeepers in Vermont. Had a lot of different characters supporting on that show. Probably one of the best ones ever was the trio of Larry and his brother Daryl and his other brother Daryl. Never forget that. Good deadpan, good slapstick sense of humor. Definitely something of an idol for me. Gonna miss him. I did see him. I know he's been like in a movie or two since then. They say he was in Big Bang Theory more recently, and I occasionally would catch some episodes in reruns of that, but I haven't, I don't remember seeing him in it. I guess I'm always, focusing on, Kaylee Kuko in that show and not really seeing who else is in there, but he's going to be sorely missed. He was 94, so lived a long and full life. So hopefully you're laughing and entertaining in heaven today, Bob. And anyway, that's about all I have for this week. So grateful for you coming and spending a little bit of time with me each and every week. I'm still looking for ways to improve this show. Would really appreciate your comments and feedback. I get into some pretty deep stuff. things that could be even more of a rant, or I could even yell about stuff if I wanted to, I think. But I'm glad you're here. I hope you're telling your friends and family, hitting that subscribe button. I'm really excited to see where the future is, and I'm still working very hard on it. It's got a lot of things going on in life, and seems like the only way is up. I'm certainly hoping and praying. So thank you. I love you for that. And anyway, I will sign off for now. So glad you could be with me here in the forest. Someday I'm going to tell you what the forest is. The show, of course, is, well, maybe I'll tell you right now. We got a little time. But like, I wasn't a big fan of this show. I know a lot of people liked it, but I think it came from Friends or whatever. But apparently there was like this guy on a massage table or something, and I don't know, he sat up and his torso was exposed, and he had like a hairy chest or whatever, and so do I. You know, I'm a pretty hairy guy, and so that's kind of, and that in the Friends show they referenced it as a forest, and so I guess you could say I'm kind of bear a forest on me if you want to, and there's a lot of stuff in the forest. Sometimes it's hard to navigate. That's why we talk about deep issues and things like that. So anyway, I didn't expect to explain that to you, but that's where that comes from, I think. I don't know what episode that was, and it was late at night one time, and I was half asleep, and maybe I just heard what I wanted to. But anyway, that's about all I have for now. I can't wait to do the next episode, and anyway, until then, take care. Have a great week. Thanks. Bye.